The next day she sent me a text and she went, oh my God, I was able to walk to the bathroom. I literally, before I called you, was crawling to the bathroom. I said, great, now that you can stand on your foot, you better put it up the backside of your attorney.
And welcome to Holistic Circle podcast, Spiritual Conversation. My name is Philipp Kobald. We are reaching out to people who are passionate about spreading light, love, and joy and holistic knowledge. And I say, welcome, Kristine Genovese. Welcome, Kristine.
Thank you so much. I'm so delighted to be here with you and all your listeners.
Well, I'm delighted too. We just talked about it, that we are both like to use the word holistic. So I hope that this will be the first real conversation in my little podcast about the holistic philosophy, among other things. That's so wonderful. And first of all, of course, I want to say hello to our viewers. Thank you so much for being with us again. You know, this is your podcast, your hour. And on my website, you have a little form. You tell me which guests you want me to invite. You tell me which questions you want me to ask. And I'm sitting here for you, speak to the people you want me to speak and ask the question you want me to ask. And with this, I would love to invite you to give us a little bit of a background. You do so many things and hardly read all the stuff that you are doing. And so I'm happy to hear it from you live.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I think, I'm the creator of the Soul Intelligence Method. And that is a bioenergetic healing method that helps get to the root cause of dis-ease in the body. So I work with a lot of functional medicine and integrated medicine doctors and their patients, getting to the underlying mental and emotional challenges surrounding whatever's going wrong in the physical body. And the method is based in science. It's based in something called bioenergetics. Dr. Alexander Lowen in the 1950s started to document it. And it's basically the correlation between your physical well-being and your mental and emotional well-being. So if if you're not feeling well physically, then typically mentally and emotionally, you might be challenged as well. So my method actually figures out what's stuck, because emotion is energy in motion. And when energy is no longer in motion, that's when it gets trapped or it pools in the physical body. And that's when it causes the dis-ease, the dysfunction, or the dissonance in the frequency. And so I really think our physical bodies function more like our subconscious mind. It's telling us what's going on, what's not sitting well. And so once something manifests in the physical, we really have to get in there and get underneath to find out what can we do to shift it.
Wow, I can see you're fully into it, and I'm not surprised. You've been on many podcasts and you know your stuff. I heard that something exciting is happening around right now. So, but let's hang on there for a second before we're talking about the New York Times Square. Just maybe a quick moment of your personal background, your individual story,
Sure.
how you came to where you are right now. That would just to get a better mapping of who we're talking to.
Oh my gosh, sure. Well, my story is I was a corporate turnaround specialist for most of my career. So I know, look at that. So I was focused on what people, processes, or technology needed to shift or change for the business to achieve their objectives. So whether that was, selling or growing. So I'm
getting serious.
I know, look out. So a revenue and growth specialist, right, is what I focused on. And March 12th of 2020 was a pretty pivotal day for me. And if you go rewind the clock to March of 2020, that was pretty much the beginning of the universal timeout known as the COVID pandemic, right? So that Thursday, I got a call from the head of HR letting me know my services were no longer needed. Now, I was in shock because I had never been fired in my entire career. I always met or exceeded expectations. And in fact, I had just gotten a performance bonus. So you want to talk about shock of your life? What do you mean you no longer need me? What's going on? He said, well, the CEO wants to go in a different direction. I'm like, what? Backwards? What direction could you possibly? We were already making the turn. We were starting to hit the objectives, right? And so essentially what happened is I had been asking to hire staff in the fourth quarter of the year, and I kept getting that the CEO wanted to hold the line on expenses. So I wasn't able to hire the right amount of people in order to convert the marketing leads in the first quarter. So I had put the board deck together with the COO. We were supposed to go in, this is a Thursday, we're supposed to go in Monday and present to the board. And we had shown that not only if we had been able to hire those people, not only would we have met the objectives, we would have exceeded them. So when this happened, I texted my boss, the COO. I said, "Hey, I just got fired." He goes, "Me too." I'm like, "What?" So the CEO took us both out to save himself, said we didn't hire enough people, fired the two of us, and went on a hiring spree. So when that happened, the entire world shut down. So, I first went through all the grief, right? All the panic and what am I going to do? And, I'm the breadwinner and how's this all going to work out? And so fortunately, because of the nature in which I was let go, I was given an exit package. So I had about a 9-month runway to figure it out. And I remember a really good friend of mine saying to me, well, instead of getting back into what you've always done in your zone of excellence, why don't you really sit and think, what do you really want to do with your life? How can you really impact, the world and do something that's special? And that's where I learned about Brandon Burchard's talking about the zone of excellence versus the zone of genius, right? And I did a lot of prayer and a lot of meditation. And I remember this one extremely powerful meditation. I had tears running down my face. And I recall I just couldn't go back into corporate America. It felt like literally my soul intelligence was speaking to me. And I had to follow this new way of being. And I needed to bring soul intelligence into the world. And so that was the beginning of getting all of the charts that I use today, somewhat downloaded to me or given to me in essence. And so what I did is I started coaching, right? And I started coaching executives. I started coaching senior leaders to be, C-suite executives, and started coaching middle management to help them become senior leaders. And I knew I had to bridge this gap and come out of the spiritual closet, right? Because I'm like, people know me as this corporate, crazy adrenal junkie, plane hopping lunatic, right? And how am I going to transition to this spiritual gangster now? And so what I did is I set up a one-on-one at the beginning of the group program to where we'd meet and we'd, set your goals for the program. I'd have a midpoint one-on-one. And then by the time the end of the program rolled around, the end of the quarter, I would suggest, hey, we could have a regular coaching session where we talk about your goals and how things are working and where you want to go. Or we could get to the root cause of everything that's going wrong, why you're in this situation with your team in the first place, and what's really, truly going on at home in your personal life. If you take a risk walk with me and do a soul intelligence session, every single person took me up on my soul intelligence offer, and I knew it was game on. So that's really how the method started and how I got, involved in this crossover. And I always knew I had to bridge the gap between the work world, the business world, and the spiritual world. And how do you do that? And the way you do that is through the language of science. So a lot of what I talk to people about is, the laws of science, bioenergetics, quantum physics, neuroplasticity, all of those things, because science takes away the element of, spirituality or religion and puts it back into this field of study that people understand.
First of all, I must say I'm so delighted. I was always wondering how it'd be to be an interview on Bloomberg, and I finally managed. I was just all the time looking on the screen, waiting. Where are my mark? Where are my stock? Where are my stock information? Maybe I'll do the file and edit it later in the video. At this point, I feel great being finally working for Bloomberg.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
It sounded amazing. And I think on this little spiritual podcast, I had a lot of ex-CEOs, but this is the first time we got quarterly talk, hitting the marks. This is, I think, a whole new thing. And I guess some of my guest ears are like, what am I hearing? Am I in the wrong channel?
Well, that's just how I got started, right?
But at least you're giving me the opportunity to reach to a new target group on my channel.
Oh, well, fantastic.
This was really interesting because, the way you're presenting it, the clarity, and you really see that this corporate world is such a structured machine. Everything is just so and in its place, and it has to be, because there needs to be reporting, accountability for every step of the way. And I guess that this is also a training. You can't just shake it off from one moment to the other. And it's most probably, as a human being, it imprinted on you to learn to be task-orientated, to need this accountability. Whereas it's a spiritual world, things flow a bit more easy and everything is a little bit hearsay here and there. And maybe also in a good way, not this breaking down to numbers also limits a lot of things, right? It opens to accountability and structure and performance and stuff, but it also limits, because everything between the cracks is just between the cracks. So I think you're doing exactly what a lot of people trying, but you're obviously succeeding breaching that gap. And interestingly, this podcast is all about breaching gap between science and spirituality. That's one of the great themes. So one more reason to have you here. Maybe it would be good at this point. Can you give a little bit of background that bioenergetic, people don't know where it comes from, how it was seen? Can you give a bit of a background to get this deeper into your world?
Sure. Well, I usually start with some just basic stuff. I'm sure your listeners know that everybody and everything is energy, right? Even though we learned back in, primary school or grade school that, we're all protons, neutrons, electrons vibrating in this electromagnetic field. But I think we forget that because we're physical, we're corporal, right? And we feel separate. But when you start talking about energy, most of the work that I do is over Zoom. And the only way I'm seeing you right now is through an energy transfer, right? That's how this works. We take it for granted that we can stream programs onto our television. It's energy, it's frequency. That's how the information is carried and delivered into a receiver. So whether that's your laptop, whether that's your phone, whether that's your TV, it's an energy transfer. So the thought that, we are not energy is impossible. That's part of the basics of learning, just in terms of where we start. Everybody and everything is energy. And so with that concept, that means energy can get trapped in people, places, or things. And it can get trapped in your mental body, your emotional body, your spiritual body, essentially in your energy. And if you're energy and I'm energy and we're next to each other, that means I'm going to pick things up from you. So when we talk about quantum physics, when we talk about the quantum field, the first thing that gets sent out, right, is the signal. And that is what comes from the idea, like our IQ, the idea, the intuition, the inspiration, that initial thought has to come from the inside first before it goes out into the field. But what collapses that wave and brings it into particle form is emotion. Emotion is the magnetic attractor. It's the magnetic part of the electromagnetic field. And that's why, a number of years ago when the book The Secret came out, or the movie The Secret came out, people did the affirmations, but if they didn't feel it, right, and they didn't experience it, they couldn't collapse the wave, the magnetic wave, to bring it into material form. So you have to have both. The magnetic side is the female side, and the electric side is the male side. So you have to have both in order to bring it into physical form. And so what I teach, when I talk about how my method works, is since we are these energetic beings and things get stuck in our mental, emotional, physical bodies, we need to do something to figure out where it's stuck. Now, the way our body functions is we have a conscious mind and a subconscious mind, right? I think we all know we use, believe it or not, only 5% of our mind, the conscious mind, to do all that strategizing, figuring, and calculating that we do, which is fascinating to me because we spend an awful lot of time up here in this head of ours. But that only has an electromagnetic field around it of about 2 feet. Our hearts, where we magnetize, where we feel those emotions, have a 6-foot wide energy field. It is infinitely huge compared to what we have around our mind. So again, it's the more powerful part. And if you think about, if I revert back to corporate America for a second, there was no room for emotion there, right? Like it was, you were not supposed to show emotion at all. It was all about stuffing emotions. And when people do that, when they hold on to that, they stuff that emotion, the energy has to go somewhere, because we know once energy is created, it can't be destroyed. It has to go somewhere. So if it gets trapped in the body, that's when people start to have those physical ailments. And, we do know today is about 95% of doctor visits, if people go to their doctor, it's for a chronic condition, something that just won't heal, as opposed to an acute something, which is like I'm bleeding or having a heart attack or I broke an arm, which, we take care of right away at the hospital. But chronic conditions typically don't heal because there's an underlying emotional root cause keeping it locked in the body. Or you'll fix one thing and then something else goes wrong because we haven't figured out what that is. Well, the reason we haven't figured it out is because it's stuck in our subconscious mind. And the way our physical body functions is it's like a barometer to the subconscious mind. So it's going to tell us what's really going on. Like, for example, if I woke up this morning and I had like a pain on the right side of my neck, like I can't turn my head one direction. That's kind of common, right? You think, oh, I just slept wrong. Well, the right side of the body is male. I have a pain in my neck. I'm being inflexible, or perhaps my partner's being inflexible, and my body needed to bring it to my attention. So it could be something as innocuous as that, to something that's causing you to pay attention to something that has to heal on a more chronic level, like IBS or something like that. And so bioenergetics is really the correlation between your physical well-being and your mental and emotional well-being. And so that was documented in the 1950s by Dr. Alexander Lowen. And essentially, to me, it's common sense, right? If you don't feel well physically, mentally, emotionally, you're probably not doing so hot, and vice versa. So we actually have to figure out what are those things that are stuck, because a lot of times we don't know. It could be self-limiting beliefs. It could be old unresolved trauma. It could be an old pattern, an archetype that we're holding on to. It could be negative energies, emotions, thoughts. Like there's a lot of things it could be. And so my method allows me to figure out what that is and to get into that subconscious mind. So you can bring that up from the subconscious to the conscious and allow it to be released.
To me, this makes a lot of sense because that's why it's a spiritual podcast. And I guess a lot of viewers, it makes sense too. But there are some sort of questions along the line.
Sure.
And so maybe let's take a couple of minutes with background work before we go more into your practical everyday work. And then, of course, time to the books and everything and the exciting time you just had presenting it. You said it's there since the 50s, and there have also been people before, and there's before the before, and then there's the before the before the before. And
we can go all the way back to Hippocrates if you'd like.
Maybe we can go back even further than that. And
yep.
It's been there. It's been there. Is it magic geometry? It's been there in music. It's been there even in tribal tattoos. It's been there for like basically forever.
Yes.
And I'm always so fascinated that there seems to be some simple evident knowledge that we seem to know one way or the other for like an endless amount of time, and somehow it's always a sidekick. It's never coming mainstream. It's always under the radar and a little bit hush hush, and people like you try to connect it with as good as they can to promote it with scientific evidence. Mm-hmm. But by the end of the day, it always is sedated, although it works. What is your take? Is it for us? So is it a hard way compared to just taking a medicine? Oh, I have, I said neck pain. Oh, I take a painkiller, problem solved. I don't need to work on it. I don't need to go and kick my significant others. Oh, I got my next. So I don't need to do that. I can say, oh, just take a painkiller, it's done. What do you think is the reason that it's there and it's not there?
Well, I think, I work in the field of functional medicine, right? And functional medicine is focused on getting to the root cause, why something's occurring in the body. And functional medicine doctors, integrated medicine doctors, look to treat the whole body and the whole person, right? And so when we look at it that way, right, I want to get to the underlying root cause. What caused that in the first place and what can I do about it? And I think a lot of times medications in particular mask symptoms, right? I can get rid of it temporarily, but what is that? Am I taking Advil every single day? Am I rotting my stomach lining out? And then am I creating another problem for myself later on? And I think we have to kind of focus on what's the root cause going on in the first place so that we don't have to repeat that, right? So that we can shift it up and out of the body and not have it recur or not have it show up somewhere else or have a real
I get it, but
illness.
my question was, what is it stopping to become mainstream? Why are we so slow? Why are we so slow bringing this to the mainstream public? What's blocking us?
I think in part, if you go back and you follow, the start of what we'll call allopathic medicine, which is what's considered traditional at this time, which is kind of a challenging word for me, but allopathic meaning versus naturopathic, right? It happened around the early 1900s when the oil barons, Rockefellers and others, created what today's medicine is. And they did it to create the medicines in order to keep treating symptoms so that they can continue to make money. And like most things in the United States or in the world in general, if you follow the money, you're going to follow the path to figure out what's really going on. And so I think that was where the start of, create a pill for an ill, right, started. And so I think it was about masking symptoms because they knew if they could control healthcare, they would be able to help, control the population and keep people kind of locked into that way of being. So I think what we're fighting today is that. I also think it has to do with the level of consciousness that we're all at on the planet at this time. People have talked about the end days, the apocalypse. What does that look like? And we've moved from the age of Capricorn into the age of Aquarius. And that's a very airy sign, right? And that's all about the individual, but it's about the individual being celebrated as part of the whole and being collaborative and more working towards a common goal together. And I think what's happening right now is I don't think we're going to have, this big cataclysmic, the world implodes. I think what's happening is we're separating on a level of consciousness. So I think there are people that are staying in the 3D consciousness, locked into duality, good and evil, black and white, just kind of all of the duality that we experience here. And I think, 4D is time. 5D is really where we're at that more expanded level of consciousness where we're really working on a different level to heal. And I think people are becoming more open now and are waking up and becoming a lot more aware of energy. We're using frequency to cure cancer cells now. People understand that music, energy, frequency can shift your mood immediately, right? Because it's a frequency. You're giving new information to your body. I think people are understanding the different levels of toxicity that are out there. It's not just, what's in your environment from a chemical perspective or, what harmful foods you might be eating, what you're putting into the physical body, garbage in, garbage out. I think they're recognizing, oh, what am I consuming, from, television or streaming or radio or whatever. They're starting to recognize that. They're starting to recognize people can be toxic, and so I think we're really separating on a consciousness level. And I think more people are moving into that higher level of consciousness. So they're more awake and more aware and more open to understanding how everything actually really works.
Gosh, I wish I had you on my September live streaming about artificial intelligence and therapy. I really missed you there.
Well, there's always next year.
I didn't know it at the time that you would be the one I want to have as well.
There's always next year. But yeah, actually, I have a really good friend, now that you brought up artificial intelligence, she's talking about how for businesses to be competitive in the age of artificial intelligence, they're going to have more energy work and more soul in their businesses in order to differentiate. Because everything AI is churning out, right? It's
insane.
Yes.
Thank you so much for saying that, because that is one of my main preaching themes for weeks now, that we will be forced to, if we want to get the full potential of artificial intelligence, we will have to upgrade ourselves dramatically. And that only comes if we put money into the research on consciousness and things like YouTube. We need more serious money, corporate money, to also flow in the soft research stuff, because that will enable humanity to keep up with the things that we've been creating. Thank you so unbelievably much for saying it out loud. Thank you.
Well, I'm so glad that we were able to kind of talk a little bit about it, but it's true, right? I think a lot of companies, they're all using AI. And so you either have to be as good as that machine learning, or you have to go a different element and keep the humanity in it. And that's all about soul. You know, I know you can use AI for a lot of different things. And for me, I only use it to edit anything that I write. I want it to put it in a certain format, but I always write it first. And I was horrified because I'm a contributing executive writer for Best Holistic Life magazine now. And I write an article for them at least every month. And I was horrified to find out that, there are standards now that only 70% of your article can be AI. I'm like, 70%? That seems like a lot. Like I want original thought. I want heart. I want soul. I want to have a connection through my writing. So I was absolutely horrified. I'm like, well, all I do is have it, stick it in a magazine format and create, bullets where it should be necessary, not actually changing my content. So it's just very fascinating to me that that's become like a standard.
And 70% is already where people just using different LMM models, so people don't figure out that 70%. They just run it through different raptors and then nobody notices.
Crazy, absolutely crazy.
Welcome to the brand new world. But now I think it's a good moment. Can you tell us about the book that you've been writing? I think this would be now a perfect moment. We have good understanding, I think, of your state of mind. And I'm so curious now to see what this book is about. I would love to hear it, if I'm honest.
Absolutely. Well, this is my book. It's called Healing Through Soul Intelligence. This is me. It's an LA Tribune bestseller, and it was voted 2025 Book of the Year by Best Holistic Life magazine, which is why they asked me to write. So that made me...
Amazing.
I know, right? The coolest thing is I just got back from a book tour in New York City. I had a billboard in Times Square, and I'm originally from New York City. And you know what they say, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. So that was pretty incredible. I had different signings throughout the city, Midtown, Soho, Upper West Side. It was really so much fun to do that. And, my book is really based on, certainly sharing a little bit about me, how the method was developed. But what I love about it is it's also stories of case studies and true testimonials of people who've gone through soul intelligence sessions and done the work with me. And, the foreword was written by a triple board certified MD, a Dr. Lisa Coach, really good friend of mine. And most of the stories in there is me actually working with these functional medicine and integrative medicine doctors, like MDs that are also naturopathic doctors. And they treat people, using all tools available, right? Everything from red light and nutrition to a medication if they need it, right? To get them kickstarted till their body can actually handle doing things in a natural way.
So this book is more like I'm so sorry, because usually you don't know that. I read almost all the books of my guests before, but you slipped through the cracks. I deeply apologize, because I actually they usually send me copies before and I read them all. It is one of my fun things. I love to read. So it's strange that it didn't happen between us. But so this is more like a book that gets the story, your story of healing in a practical, cozy way? Or is it like really a 1 to 3 step guide? If you have a problem, you read it and that's how you do it. Is it a how-to book or more an explanation of your philosophy of healing? And I think you also teach a lot of healers, right?
Yeah.
You mainly teach healers to heal. So you're an educator among many things.
Yeah, absolutely. So essentially what the book is more of my story, talking about the method, how it works, and then sharing other people's stories of success and how they used it to heal. And as you've said, a lot of the stories in here is really me working with other doctors, nurse practitioners, healers themselves. I help heal the healers. Now, I do have a course online that's available on my website, thesoulintelligencemethod.com. So the website is soulintelligencemethod.com. And if anybody's interested, I have a course.
The links.
You'll put it in the notes. Okay, perfect. Thank you. But, I have a course where you can learn how to do this yourself and to help other people to become a neuroenergetic health practitioner. That's really what you're doing, because it's the nervous system and it's energy that you're shifting up and out so that people are in a more receptive state so they can be in full alignment with their mission, their vision, their values, and their purpose. So
help me here for a second. Sorry to break you. Is this something that you can do on yourself? Just to be very clear here. Is it something you do to others to help people to heal others? Or can you use it on yourself for self-healing?
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, the answer to that is yes. I use it on me all the time, and yes. So you can heal yourself, you can heal others. I do have a certification process if someone wants to, professionally do this with other people, because I do have a vision of seeing this as a modality in healthcare centers and wellness centers throughout the country. That's really part of my vision. But I am teaching other people the method, not only to help heal others, but to heal themselves. And yes, you can do it on yourself. As a matter of fact, I do it quite often.
We're back on Bloomberg. We will soon talk about quarter numbers and how many thousands of doctors we brought into the system. And this is so wonderful. I'm happy every time when I have a former CEO for a former corporate executive and successful person on my show, because it's so important that people with your background come to our little world of this woo-woo spirituality and all of it. We desperately need the mix, that because you come with such a different take, you come with such a high energy and such a focused energy, and you see possibilities that maybe so many of us don't see. So I think it's great that you do what you do, because you're doing it so different than any one of us would do things like that. And that's very important and hopefully successful. So sorry, now I won't break you again anymore. If you maybe can share one or two stories, I'm sure you're perfect in presenting. You did it the whole week. The whole week you're presenting the book, and no more stupid questions.
No, not at all. I love it. You also asked, can you heal it yourself? Well, I actually recorded the book myself in a studio in California. So it is available on Audible. And I've had several people tell me, listening to the book, they felt like they were getting a healing just by listening to me read the book. So that was really cool. But it is, like I said, the book's available on Amazon and Audible format, as well as Kindle and hard copy. And I also have it through Barnes and Noble. So really, really excited. And it's fun to do book tours and to meet people in person and to hear their personal experiences. But to kind of talk about, I'll share maybe one story from the book. One doctor had called me and told me that she couldn't put weight on her foot for several months, like going on for about 6 months. And I'm like, okay, you're a doctor. What do you mean you can't put weight on your foot? What's wrong with you? Why haven't you figured out what's going on? She's like, I don't know. I've tried everything. And I said, okay, well, let's do a session. So we did a session, and I'm doing the work, and I'm going, well, what's going on with all these men not supporting you? Like at least like 4 or 5. I was like, what is going on? I'm like, are you dating? What is this, right? And she said, no. She had contractors who had been working in her home, not fulfill the contract, not complete the work, did damage to the home. She was in the middle of a lawsuit and had been so, and she couldn't even get her own attorney on the phone. I went, well, that explains it. No wonder you can't move forward, right? That's what your foot's designed to do, is to move you forward. And you've been stuck and you're unsupported. So you haven't dealt with this. So we clear all the energy around it. She also, I think, had like a cold that hadn't cleared up, and in spite of all the immunity stuff she was taking, we got rid of that. That was around mental confusion. So we cleared that. We cleared the foot. The next day she sent me a text and she went, oh my God, I was able to walk to the bathroom. I literally, before I called you, was crawling to the bathroom. I said, great. Now that you can stand on your foot, you better put it up the backside of your attorney. And she goes, I promise, that's my next goal. So it's kind of interesting when you think about what that was doing to her, right? Constantly holding that in, the resistance, not being supported, not moving forward. And it showed up in her foot, in her inability to take a step. Another doctor I worked with, she was having trouble in her marriage because her husband was doing a lot of the business side, the bookkeeping side for her. And he really wanted her to add a second location. And it was causing stress and strain on the marriage. She really wasn't committed to it, didn't really want to do it, and wasn't sure, how to tell him, that she really didn't want to do that. So I did a session for her. And the very next morning she said to me, she's like, I don't know what you did, but my husband's never treated me as nicely. We had the best conversation. It was so loving. I was able to approach him. Nothing triggered him. How did what you did for me shift him? And so I explained to her, I said, well, when your energy shifted, he naturally shifted. You felt different energetically to him. And so whatever walls were up, we were able to pull those down. So you were at least able to have, a conversation and to gain understanding and coming from that place of love. I had another woman who she has a health coaching company, and she works with a lot of health coaches, like training them how to do naturopathic healing. And she had called me and said, look, I haven't had a period in 3 months. I don't want to be around my husband. Like he's just, I don't feel good. I don't feel attractive. I just don't want him touching me. I don't want to be around. And I'm not getting any new clients. My business is starting to slow down. And so I said to her, okay, well, let's do a session. And we talked about, or as I'm doing the session, I focused on the sacral chakra, right? So we have the 7 major energy centers in our body, right? The first one's the root. The second one is the sacral chakra, where our sexual organs are. And the reason why I focused there is because she was having, challenges in terms of not menstruating. So that means something's blocked, right? And so when I checked the percentage that the sacral chakra was blocked, it was like 90% blocked. She had like not a lot going on there. So I had to move all of that energy out, because the other thing that the sacral chakra area is connected to is, in a woman in particular, it's like where we birth babies, right? It's also where we birth businesses. For a man, it's where the prostate is. The seat of manhood is also there, just like the seat of womanhood is the cervix. Incidentally, side note, that's one of the reasons why so many retired men get prostate cancer. It's because they've lost their sense of purpose, right? That's where the prostate is. Anyway, that's an aside. So I do this session, I clear it, I open up the chakra. She sends me a text the very next morning. She's like, oh my God, I got my period last night. I let my husband hold me, and I had 3 new clients in my inbox. And I was like, boom, look what happens when we clear the energy, we open it up. It flows, and most of us, what do? We shut down, we constrict, we close the energy off. And the only way things can come through is if we're open and receptive and able to receive it. So there's stories like that in the book, right? Of different people that I've helped. My own personal healing stories are in the book.
So, and if anybody wondering why it is a bestseller, I think there we go. And I guess we can hear this all day long, and we just, can write another 5 books and they're bestsellers as well, because that's the stuff we want to hear. Right?
Oh my gosh. I have more. It's so funny because like when I work with different clients and like something strange is like something even more, I'm like, wow, you're going to make the next book. There's no way. I've never seen this one before. So maybe we'll have to work together, Philipp, and we'll see if you're going to give me an aha moment for what's going on with you.
Oh, who the hell knows? You're absolutely right. But that's the stuff. I mean, we're living in such a dark time, and just to hear these moments of miracle, just to give space for the possibility that there is hope, that there is a forward, that there is a healing. This, just to hear the story itself is a healing moment, because we are all so tragic, lost with all of the divine and all the problems and the multi-layer of situations, if it's climate, if it's artificial, if it's the children, it's all of it, and it's just from everywhere around. And in the end, we're just running to some phones and scrolling like crazy to numb and shut ourselves up, because we just don't believe that hope is real any longer. Mm-hmm. And then you come along and like said, oh, you know what? I got tons of it.
Yeah. Well, this is where I choose to live, in this level of consciousness, right? And I do talk to people about the levels of consciousness too. We all start here, I think, where life is happening to me, where we feel like the victim, villain, the hero, we get caught up in the story, right? Then the next level is life is happening for me. And you start going, oh yeah, that's why that person's in my life. So I could learn this. Or, oh, I see why that happened now, right? It's kind of giving us additional clarity So I kind of look at it as life university level. Then the next level is life is happening through me. And truly, that's the state that I need to be in when I'm doing this kind of work. I feel the divine presence come through me as I'm doing the work with a client. I'm definitely connected at that point. And then the last level is life is happening as me. And so that's kind of like those few fleeting moments. Maybe you're on you're on the ski slopes and you just like hear just the faint whoosh of the wind, and you just kind of feel yourself get lost in the snow as I feel like one with it. Or for me, kind of being at the beach and feeling a part of the ocean and the waves, and that few fleeting moments where you feel the connection to everyone and everything, or those incredible meditations where, you just totally bliss out. Those are the moments where you really feel the connection and that highest level. But they're fleeting, right? Because the second you get in your car and you pull back out into traffic and somebody cuts you off, you're down to the bottom of the scale as to why did that happen to me? But as humans, I think the more often we can live in the place of life is happening for me and life is happening through me, kind of staying in those states, which I would call alpha and theta states, the happier we'll be.
I noticed those little Austrian jokes there, but well done.
I put a little bit in there for you, just a little.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. But I've seen for the method, did I see it correctly that the pendulum is a very important tool in what you do? Did I get this correctly?
Yes.
Can you maybe now spend the last 15 minutes or so we have, can we a bit talk about the methodology and why we need to get this information? Where is it coming from? Because that's always the interesting part, especially for the people watching who are more regularly on the show, who's been through this many times. We are always into this. Where is this information coming through? Is it bouncing back from within? Is it coming from above, or is it a combination? What is your take on what is happening with the pendulum? And maybe you can spend a couple of minutes. I'd like to hear your take.
Sure. Well, first of all, when I set up a session with anyone, I set up what I call a sacred space, so that I'm creating, sort of a circle of protection. Because as I mentioned, once energy is created, right, it can't be destroyed. It's got to be transmuted and go somewhere. So I want to make sure it doesn't go, onto the dog or somebody's house and create more challenges. We want to make sure that it gets transmuted and sent back to the divine. So that's really the intention of setting those protections up. And then what I do is I have people get into a relaxed position, just sitting, or laying down, whatever they prefer, and going within. And I ask them to go within and focus on the divine spark of white light within them, right? That eternal spark, that eternal part of them, the soul, in essence, and connecting with that. And then we connect also to my higher self, their spiritual teams and committees. So all of those unseen beings in the other dimensions or timelines or on the other side, right? Whether that you believe in angels or guides or ancestors or any other beings that are unseen because they're vibrating at a higher level than we are, that they're there as well. And then ultimately getting us connected to the divine of all that is. And then I also make sure that we're connected and grounded here in the earth plane as well, because this is the plane of existence where we're operating. And, one thing I will say is that if you've decided to incarnate on the earth plane, you're a brave soul. So just for showing up, we all get, a super credit for doing that. We all get a gold star. So in terms of where's the information coming from, I do believe that, the way I do the work, that it's coming from both my guides and their guides and the divine, right? And I always ask, let's shift what's ever in that person's best and highest good for their best and highest timeline, regardless of what I'm focusing on. So if someone comes to me and said, I have the problem of X, or, like I've described a few different situations, I'm always asking for the divine to tell me what's in their best and highest good. We may think we know, but it's nice to have that to kind of come through. And so I use a book of charts and a pendulum, and I have about 30 different charts. And the charts, like the first page is really the table of contents, and that's where I start. And I just ask, where do I need to go first? So whether that's, shifting into lower force energy that person's picked up that needs to shift out, whether that's an old archetype or pattern, whether I've got to work on a physical organ in the body, whether I have to work on a body system like the cardiovascular system, whether that's at negative energies, emotions, and thoughts, whether that's a self-limiting belief that's clouding the way they view the world, a sense of I can't win, for example, as one, or I'm not good enough, right? Which shows up for a lot of people. I allowed the charts to really guide the information. So people have asked me, are you a channel? And I would say, yes, the information is being channeled, or when they ask, where is it coming from? I do believe it's coming from, that highest plane of existence, and sharing what's in that best and highest good for that individual. Because I do believe we are individual aspects of the divine. And
right.
Yeah, part
now
of
comes the critical
the
part.
whole. Sorry.
Now comes the critical question, or the critical
Okay.
part. When you then always say, I release this energy. Is this a process where you ask the divine, ask those guidance to help you to that be released?
Yes.
Or is it something that you immediately say yes? So that's the way you go. So that's,
I asked that it shift
that's-
back to the divine for transmutation into love and light. Yeah.
So it would be clearly a clairvoyant technique by the end of the day if we categorize it.
I would think in some way, yeah. But I will say, look, my first sense, there's a lot of clairs. I'm clairsentient, so I will feel first. And that's my primary sense. I'm super, empathic. I will feel it. I'll get chills. I'll know. Then really my secondary is probably clairaudient. I'll hear something and then I might see it. But I always have my inner knowing, and that's really the soul intelligence or the claircognizance.
So but here comes the tricky part, because you said in this book, this amazing bestseller, that you help people to learn this.
Yes.
Now, there's always then the big question, people say, well, I'm not clairvoyant and so on, and I don't know what it is. It's so undefined. Can I try it? So there's always, you know what, you most probably heard it many times before. So how can you approach a doctor who is interested, or a therapist who is interested, who will tell you I'm not clairvoyant? And I guess you've heard this before. What is here the right approach to address this?
So the good thing is that everybody can learn how to trust the pendulum, and can, in the beginning of my course, right? That's one of the most basic fundamental things, right? Is to trust the information that's coming through the pendulum. Teaching people what is a no, what is a yes, what a working circle is in terms of moving the energy out and trusting it. And so you build upon that skill set. And the truth is everybody has it. It's just a matter of, have they focused their time and attention on it to develop it, and be more comfortable with it. And it's always fun for me. I just actually had a new student a couple weeks ago, she's like, oh my God, I'm not moving the pendulum. It's moving. I go, I know. How cool is that? Right? But just the wonder and the awe when you understand that the energy is coming through you and it's showing up in the pendulum, so that you can read the charts. And that's essentially what I use the pendulum for, is to read the information on the charts. And sometimes I do get information. I will say that there have been times where someone from the other side has a message for someone. It could be someone who's passed on, a loved one. Sometimes it's a higher, it could be an archangel. It could be someone from history. I have different beings that come in sometimes to support and share messages with people. So in that way, in that sense, I use the charts to get the information that I channel.
If I might be maybe allowed an observation.
Sure.
From those I have close to 100 interviews this year already.
Oh my goodness.
And and has one thing that is really consistent, is people who have clairvoyant abilities, they are more happy. I cannot say, I don't know how to say it.
Really?
But they're, first of all, a lot of them have very little fear about death. That's one common thing with so many clairvoyant people, that they believe in this transition, and it takes a lot of scary out of the process, that they know that there is a transition. Yes, they want to live. Of course, they're not suicidal. But this fear of death that most of us were clinging on, that is lesser at clairvoyant, and there is somehow a more calm inside of them, a deep feeling more connected to the world, or more peaceful in the world, or more secure in the world. I don't know if I have the right terminology. And this, I guess, makes people like you so attractive, that they're somehow calmer than so many of us because you feel safe in this world. Would that be something you could relate to?
Yeah. I mean, I do. I think there's an inner knowing, right? I know I'm divinely protected. I know I'm connected to infinite source. I come from a place of abundance. I don't come from that place of lack. I think I've done a lot of healing, and I didn't share a whole bunch of my own personal healing stories, but I promise they are in the book. I'll just say, one thing, growing up as a kid, I grew up with an alcoholic father, right? So I was raised with no matter what I did, it was never good enough. So I always had to exceed expectations to get praise or attention. So that aspect of I'm not good enough served me extremely well in business, right? I was always exceeding expectations, making money, getting new positions. So that worked great. Where it didn't work so well was in my personal life. And the reason was I was so used to doing everything I would overdo, causing my partner to underdo, and not feeling loved or supported in my relationships. So you can see like both aspects, right, of a self-limiting belief that I had to work through in order to be comfortable with who I am in the world. So, we all go through our work. And I really believe, to be in this healing space, that you have to, go through your own healing journey in order to be able to help others, right? So that you have something in common to share, that you can totally relate to where they are, what they've done, and how this incredible spiritual being in front of you is having a human experience because you've gone through a similar human experience. So I think it's that, right? I think I'm in this wisdom stage, Maiden, mother, crone. I think I've hit the crone stage. So I think wisdom is helpful.
You're telling me those things, and I'm rereading your name, Spiritual Gangster, and somehow I think like you're more like a spiritual angel or something lovely.
Well, that's kind of the irony of the last name. I kind of come by that honestly, like I told you. So with a last name like Genovese, I got to work with it.
Definitely. It is a point. Well, we are coming to a little bit to the end, but just help people quick who've been with us such a long time now. You said you do online work. You not only work with therapists, you also take on clients. You said you're making book tour. You just made a book tour, so you I guess go out there and you educate. So just a little bit quick staccato. You work with groups of healers. You certify them. You work with you do the job. If I want to reach you, all the ways I can.
Absolutely. Well, the best place to find me is on my website, soulintelligencemethod.com, and I know you're going to put that in the show notes. But you can find all about me there. You can order my book there if you'd like. What I love to do, if my calendar is booked, I do have other certified practitioners on my website who could do individual sessions for people who are equally talented and qualified to do that. If for some reason my calendar is full and I can't, but I do something once a month as a courtesy, at least through the end of this year, it's free. The first Wednesday of every month at 6 p.m. Eastern, I do a free group soul intelligence session on Zoom. So if you go to my website and you sign up for that, you'll actually be able to experience what it's like to do a group soul intelligence session, which essentially I pick a theme. For example, maybe it's the theme of abandonment. And so then I work the theme of abandonment through for everybody that's there in the group watching live or later. So that's a great way to experience it, right? To get a sense of what is this all about, So I'd invite your listeners to do that. And I do have great resources on my website. I've got a free downloadable ebook. It's not the actual physical book, but it was a precursor to the book if they're interested. And then I have a webinar that talks about the course so they can see, is that really something that I might want to do as well on there? So I have a lot of different tools and resources available for people to take advantage of. And like I said, what I really want to do is I want to share this method with other people. I really want people to use it. I want to see it as part of a wellness center protocol and program so that we're healing people mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually, energetically, in all ways, because my goal is to make the world healthy.
And it sounds like you're going to succeed.
Well,
I believe
well, thank you so much. Yeah, I've been called the female Joe Dispenza. I should be so lucky. He's an amazing mentor, and I hope I have the opportunity to work with him at some point.
Well, Kristine, it was a power explosion. I need to compress now a little bit in hot bathtub and just soak it all in. It was an amazing experience to have met you, and I thank you so much for coming and lightening up our little show.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it. I will definitely have to get you a book.
Thank you.